All right, good day, everybody. This is Marcel. Welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're recording on June 23rd, 2021. Hope all is well for you out there in the world today. Heading towards the end of the spring and into the summer. We may be even into the summer. Have to look that up. But the weather is definitely warming up, which means that it's the conclusion of several seasons and the start of some others. And we'll delve into that as we go through the show. But all is well here in Metro Atlanta as we go through the past few weeks of sports and things that are going on in the world. On today's broadcast, we will delve into the NBA playoffs in the backdoor cut. We're in the conference finals, excuse me. So we'll go over those finals in the conference semifinals. We have to do some recaps there, as well as the NBA draft lottery that took place yesterday. Detroit basketball is about to get a superstar player, and we'll delve into that. We'll transition into the free kick in the world of professional soccer. Atlanta United has a match tonight against New York City FC. We'll preview that, as well as some news and notes from the world of world soccer as the UEFA's or the Euros and the Copa America continues its activities. We'll then go into the miscellaneous department about John Rahm winning the U.S. Open and Major League Baseball putting focus on all of the wrong things. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, head to the mothership, thesportsinquirer.net, which is the premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. If you head onto there, you'll get archives of the Sports Inquirer Show, like the one you're listening to now, as well as our other podcasts and broadcasts, such as The Verbal Submission, which focuses on mixed martial arts and professional wrestling, and all things in between. So make sure you go to thesportsinquirer.net and see what we are doing. You can also go to our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Anytime that we do a post and an update on our site, it goes to all of our social media platforms. So if you want to keep up to date with everything that we're doing, make sure you give that a check. And then finally, if you want to subscribe to our audio and video content providers, such as YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes, that'd be great too. Best way to do that is to go to those specific platforms, subscribe to the Sports Inquirer, and everything that we do from the Inquirer Show to the other podcasts and other interviews that goes to those platforms as well. So once again, give us a subscription on there and you'll be up to date on all things that are going on. All right, let's go into the NBA and the backdoor cut and look at all things happening in that world. Let's start with last night's contest between Phoenix and the Clippers. If you were falling asleep and didn't watch the end of it, I actually stayed up for it. I'm proud of myself. It was past midnight East Coast time, Eastern Standard Time, and I actually watched the whole game. So respect for me and being able to have some stamina to stay up for it. But Phoenix did win the contest 104 to 103. Lots to delve into with this contest, but if you look at the last minute, big things to take away from it. Clippers were up one with about 8 seconds left. Paul George goes to the free throw line. He had a big night, 26 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, played 41 minutes in the contest, but he missed both free throws that he took with that margin. Phoenix was able to go down in the other end after a ball was knocked out of bounds. They had about 0.7 seconds left, 0.9 seconds left in the contest. Under the basket, Jay Crowder did an inbound lob pass to DeAndre Ayton. He was able to jam the ball in and only about 0.2 of a second went off. So that gave Phoenix the 104 to 103 lead. The Clippers were able to inbound the ball, unable to get a shot off. But that was a long shot by Paul George, but near around not half court, but about 3/4 court. And it did not go in. He shot it late anyway, wouldn't have counted. But very big win for Phoenix, who are really making themselves the class of the NBA playoffs. We know Chris Paul, who has been out the past 2 games. I guess the COVID protocols. I guess he tested positive for COVID and is isolated from the team and all activities. Obviously, he's been there. I would have said coming in this series, he's been the MVP of that team during the regular season and over the course of the playoffs with their postseason wins. But we've seen an emergence of several key players for Phoenix in this series. Obviously, Devin Booker, 20 points in the contest. He didn't have the 40 plus point triple double like he did in game one, but still, he made some timely shots, hit several baskets in the fourth quarter, including one with about a minute left to go to keep Phoenix within striking range. And actually, that shot that did not give him that did not give him the lead, but got him within one before the Paul George missed free throws and then the Ayton dunk at the end. But Ayton 14, 24 points, 14 rebounds. He's been a guy that we look at his draft class from 3 years ago. We've seen the emergence of Trae Young and Luka Doncic becoming all stars, and in the case of Doncic, becoming an MVP candidate, and Trae Young is going to be right there too. And we'll get to Trae in a moment, but you look at that draft class. Who was the first overall pick? Wasn't Luka, wasn't Trae, it was DeAndre Ayton, and he's had an up and down career with Phoenix. Remember, he got suspended 2 years ago for no, I would say substance abuse, but it wasn't substance abuse. I guess it was PEDs, performance enhancing drugs. But he has found a way to rebound from that, literally and figuratively, rebounding on the court quite well. I said game high 14 rebounds, but he has been a big presence for Phoenix in on the inside, and him and Booker have been just a catalyst for the team throughout this postseason, along with Chris Paul, to get him to this point. But what we have seen with the past two games, though, with Paul being unavailable, is the emergence of Cameron Payne or Campaign or Champagne. Well, it's Campaign. People going with the fun with the nicknames. But 29 points in the contest, nine assists, in that point guard spot. That has been massive for the Suns, because we've seen in the past when it was only Devin Booker as far as a viable backcourt player, he's been putting up points, but was unable to be a contributor on other ends and just to have more balance on the court. We've seen with Chris Paul on the team this year, Booker emerge in a major way. Cameron Payne, and not saying that he's Chris Paul, but he's a really young guy. He's in his early 20s, was playing internationally about 2 years ago, has found his way back into the NBA, and has been really the MVP these first two games for the Suns in this conference final. As I said, when you get Chris Paul back, and he should be back, I think they're saying game three, he'll be back by the series. It's not an injury like the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard, and we'll get to the Clippers in about 30 seconds. But when Chris Paul comes back, you bring him back. Obviously, he's been the starter. He's a big contributor. Having Cameron Payne coming off the bench is a major factor in a good way for the Suns. If he could be on the second unit, he's producing this with first unit minutes. Imagine what he could do on the second team. So this is a really positive moment or situation, for the Suns as they have the 2-0 lead. As far as the Clippers go, yeah, that's a bad loss for the Clippers. I mean, I want to say it's devastating. We've had that talk of, I think, one or two shows ago. We use the terms disaster and devastating and a lot of hyperbole in sports compared to real life issues. But in this vehicle, realm in the sports world in the playoffs, that was a very, very bad loss for the Clippers. Not only do you go down 2-0, you lost your first two games of the series. Paul George, he missed the two free throws. You got to worry about his confidence as they progress through the series. Yeah, and we've all made the jokes with the pandemic P, because he has a nickname Playoff P because he emerges and performs well in the playoffs. He's been inconsistent with the Clippers in that regard, even with the Pacers. But he's had some strong moments, and he's had some not strong moments. But this was definitely a not strong moment for him, with the Clippers in the postseason. So you worry about him. Kawhi Leonard, I don't know why. I'm not a doctor. None of us are if you're listening to this, or at least we're not the team doctor for the Clippers or that organization. From what you're saying, if it's just a knee injury, you've got no diagnosis on it. We don't know if there's a sprain, if it's a tear, if there's a break, or and knees do kneecaps break. But we don't know what the situation is. They're keeping it very close to the vest. I don't know why, for just maybe the team's sake, you just don't rule him out for the rest of the playoffs with a knee injury. Because if he's not coming back now, and we know his injury history and the leg issues he's dealt with, even back in the San Antonio days, if if he's missed these first two games, I highly doubt we'll see him in this series. So I think because you have that aura, or not an aura, but you have that perception of when is he going to come back? Is he going to be a big contributor? I think if you just rule him out, the team can move on and try to work with what they have on paper. But yeah, that was it. But for as far as the Clippers go, we've seen them go down 0-2 each of their playoff series. Remember the first round was against Dallas. They came back and won that series. They were down 0-2 in the Utah series in the conference semifinals and came back and won that. I think this is a different deal for two reasons than the Dallas and the Utah series. One, no Kawhi Leonard. I mean, that's a major blow for them as far as not having him available to play in these contests. And then two, Phoenix is they're the hottest team in the NBA right now. Just they play the defense with the defensive effort. You know, with Ayton in the middle, Jay Crowder. You look at only 2 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists in the contest. Will play 32 minutes. He gives you solid defense. Mikal Bridges as well in that forward spot. So they play defense. They got enough scoring with Booker and Ayton, and then if Chris Paul comes back, that's gonna be even more. They are the most complete team in the playoffs left in the playoffs right now. And you could have said we should have seen this coming. I mean, they finished second in the Western Conference in the regular season. They have home court over Milwaukee or Atlanta, whoever emerges from the East. So they've been a really strong regular season team. But we get enamored with a lot of the other superstar franchises like the Lakers with their roster, or Brooklyn, what we saw what they developed, Philadelphia. We've seen those teams in the regular season. We look at their players and we figured that once the playoffs start, those superstar players will emerge and things will be better, or they'll be superior to Phoenix. But that hasn't been the case, whether it's due to injuries like in Brooklyn and Los Angeles, or the Clippers' dysfunction. I mean, the Sixers' dysfunction. But in the end, you have Phoenix is the top team right now in the Western Conference. They should win this series, and you have to look at them as a favorite to win the NBA championship. But we'll be keeping track of everything going on with that series. We look at the Atlanta and Milwaukee series that starts tonight in the Eastern Conference Finals. Before we get to the actual preview of that conference final, let's look at the teams that were eliminated in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Philadelphia has major issues, and I put on Twitter or on the social media, we're at the level of the NBA in a lot of sports. You can put this in any sport that you follow, even if you're not a big NBA person. It looks like we're in an era where rewards are given before they're really earned, and internal motivation is something that we have to account for when we're assessing the development of a player. I put Ben Simmons in that category for several reasons. You look at his physical skill set, 6'9", 6'10", can handle the ball like a point guard, solid passing ability, can rebound, as well defends the perimeter, can defend really all five positions or any player on the court because of his size and his ability to move his feet. He's a prodigy. He's been talked about since he was 15, 16 years old as the number one pick in the NBA, future superstar. I remember the LeBron James comparisons, even when he was in Australia, or he's Australian, so even when he was there, and then he came over to the United States, for prep school or for high school, in essence. We saw him go to LSU. He was drafted. He went there. We saw the hype of saying this is going to be the next superstar. Inconsistent career, even not a career, inconsistent year at LSU. They didn't even make the NCAA tournament when he was on the roster. Was that necessarily his fault? I mean, he should have been a leader of a team that at least can make make the NCAAs. They didn't, but coaching issues, a lot going on with LSU. So, what was the book on Ben Simmons coming into the NBA? All the size attributes, the ball handling, the ability to pass, even the ability to defend. We knew all of that coming in. But what was the biggest issue? His lack of ability to shoot consistently. And I say consistently because we'll get to why I say consistently in a moment. But he still gets drafted first overall in the draft by the Sixers. Injures it, has a foot injury, sits out his rookie season, or should have been his rookie season. But he comes into the NBA, and we see the same exact thing we saw as a high schooler, and the same exact thing we saw at LSU. All the things we've described, and he's been rewarded by it by being an all-star multiple times. 3 years in his 3 times in his career, he's been an all-star. He's been an all-defensive NBA first teamer, but he still hasn't developed a shot. And he's been rewarded by maximum contract. He still hasn't developed his shot. And now we expect him as a 24-year-old, 25-year-old to all of a sudden become Seth Curry and or Steph Curry or Seth or Steph is one of the Curry brothers and become this big time shooter. It's not going to happen because he doesn't want it. If he didn't have the internal fortitude to develop a jump shot, and I'm not even saying 3-pointers, I've been saying since he came into the league, he does not have to be a 3-point shooter, but just hit the mid-range game. Be a Rip Hamilton. Be a guy that can hit the mid-range. We've seen Chris Paul make an entire career out of hitting the mid-range. DeMar DeRozan, guys criticize him for not shooting enough 3-pointers, but his mid-range game is on point, and he's been able to make a solid career in the NBA. With Ben Simmons' physical attributes, he should be able to develop a mid-range game that will make it so much easier for him to pass the ball, easier for him to drive to the lane, and make himself a better player on the offensive end. He has refused to do that. Now we're getting to the point where he is unable to hit free throws. He had the worst free throw shooting percentage in the postseason in the history of the NBA for a player that attempted at least 70 free throws in a postseason. And we put all the most worst free throw shooters out there: Ben Wallace, Shaquille O'Neal, Wilt Chamberlain, Dwight Howard, all these guys who we mock and make fun of and criticize, really more than make fun of, but criticize for not being able to hit free throws in their career. Ben Simmons, your point guard, has the worst percentage than all those guys. That's a major problem for the Sixers and for him. And you look at his makeup, and I'm not I don't care who you date or what you do off the court. I mean, I see the stuff. I'm human, but I mean, I follow sports and you follow other things, but you see his lifestyle and who he hangs out with. There's a lot of family and a lot of celebrities, whether he in that regard. And I'm not saying he has to be in the gym 24/7 and obsess over basketball. There's a balance to it. But I'm not seeing the motivation from him to better himself in that part of his game. And he's been rewarded and compensated for it and been babied, whether it's his brother being a shooting coach, whether it's him having an insular lifestyle, and the Sixers consistently defending him, and media members as well, and the fans. It's like, oh, I've literally heard media people I respect, or even analysts I respect, say he doesn't need a jump shot. Now that's changed in the past few weeks because it's become reality. He needs a jump shot. But I would see this excuse making for him for years. And I'm saying that's not good. And it all culminated in that series against the Hawks. Now, Sixers have more problems than Ben Simmons. I said all of that. Doc Rivers, major issues there as well. another Game 7 loss in the postseason. He's lost in the Game 7s with Boston, with Orlando, and with the Clippers. A lot of bad postseason losses for Doc Rivers, who, and I could say you personally, very friendly guy, very good with the media, very approachable, as far as my interactions with them. But it's not, it's, and you want to see he's not a bad coach, but he's not an elite coach. I mean, I know he won the championship in Boston. You can never take that away from him. But that was a really bad look for him with Philadelphia. Tobias Harris, maximum contract, not contributing much. They're in a situation where they're going to have to really reevaluate where that franchise is going. Ben Simmons being traded, I think that's a distinct possibility. I said all that stuff about Simmons. Even with all that, he should not be kicked out of the league. He's still a valuable asset. I think in another place. I think he's done in Philadelphia. Just for here in Atlanta, I would say this all the time, and the Falcons are starting to do this as well. Going just a little bit NFL. Well, Dan Quinn, whenever he was on the sideline as head coach of the Falcons, every time you would see him, you would think 28-3. And now his lead the Falcons had in the Super Bowl that they lost to New England. Julio Jones, to a lesser degree, same deal. Matt Ryan, I think, is still dealing with that now. But when he gets to that point, and with Dan Quinn, and I'm not saying, and Quinn, he could probably be head coach somewhere else, and he might actually have some success in another location. But him in Atlanta just was not going to work out. Ben Simmons in Philadelphia is not going to work out. They just need to, for both all parties involved, move on and send them in another direction. But it does. But if you make Simmons a scapegoat, which it sounds like I'm doing, it goes definitely more beyond that. Embiid has to be healthy more consistently in his career. Tobias Harris, you have to get more production from him. You just have a lot to worry about or figure out in Philadelphia. So it goes beyond just trade Ben Simmons because he can't hit free throws. But he's a big factor in it. But Philadelphia has more things going on than just that. I look at Brooklyn. Health was the biggest issue with them losing. We saw Kevin Durant do all he can. Major performances in game fives, game six, game seven, later on in that series, just did not get enough help from another person. James Harden, with a hamstring injury, he was out there in spirit and to pass the ball a little bit, but he was not the same guy. Kyrie Irving with the ankle injury, he didn't even play the last few games of that Brooklyn series for Brooklyn in that series against Milwaukee. And credit to Milwaukee, they were able to win that series. Chris Middleton had a big game seven. Giannis had a big night as well, 30 plus points in several of those games. But you have to look at that. And I would think if Brooklyn was healthy, they probably would have won that series. But as I've been saying, and I got on LeBron James a show or two ago when he was saying that the NBA playoffs are ruined by all of the injuries and trying to blame the schedule and everything like that. Look, injuries are a part of sports. It's part of whatever the equivalent of injuries are. Adversity is a part of life in whatever form of life that you're living. But in sports, injuries are a part of the reality that you have when you're competing. We don't want to see injuries. I want to see all. I have no dog in the fight. Sure, I grew up a Knicks fan. I live in Atlanta, so I like to see the Hawks do well for friends and other people that I know that are really into Atlanta Hawks basketball. And I said I grew up in New York as a Knicks fan, and so I like to see the Knicks do well in certain ways. But if they win or lose, it doesn't really affect my day. Same thing with the Hawks. I just want to see good players in good competition at the highest level. And injuries, unfortunately, get in the way of that. But that's sports, though. That's the way things, work out. But would I like to see a fully healthy Brooklyn team competing for a championship and going for that goal? Of course I would, because that'd be some great looking basketball to see. But that's not the reality of the situation. But Brooklyn ultimately it's just the Bucks had the better team in the end, and they just moved on. I will say this about Brooklyn though; it's very interesting. After next season, Kyrie Harden and Durant are all free agents. How are they going to work that out? I can guarantee you all three of those guys will not, they'll be on the team this upcoming year because they have to run it back. Because you have to get a fully healthy season from all three of those guys and see what you get on the court, including an off season of training and everything like that. But I'm very interested, to see what happens after next season when all three of those guys are free agents. Very intrigued by that. But I say all of that to preview this matchup with Atlanta and Milwaukee. And Atlanta, I mentioned all these other teams and what they were doing and not doing. I have to get to the Hawks. Respect to Atlanta. Very good win on the road in Game 7 against Philadelphia. Kevin Herter, probably the man of the match for the Hawks in that game, 20 plus points. Really gave good offense and good ball handling. Even made some defensive efforts as well, for Atlanta. When it comes to Atlanta and Milwaukee, obviously in these type of series, the best players tend to cancel each other out for the most part. And with the Atlanta and Philadelphia, Trae Young and Embiid, they kind of canceled each other out. I mean, they each made major contributions to their teams, but as far as points and production, they were relatively the same. What Atlanta was able to get was Herter's performance in Game 7, John Collins' performance in Game 6 in that series, and those were some big moments for them. Lou Williams in Game 5 was able to give him double-digit points off the bench in that series. Those are the players that are going to really contribute and make a big factor in your series. So even when it comes to Atlanta and Milwaukee, Giannis is going to put up his numbers and get his rebounds and do all the stuff he does. Trae Young is going to be able to do his same thing, being able to distribute the ball and score points when necessary. You have to look at Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. Are they better than Clint Capella, John Collins? And I'll throw Kevin Herter in there. And basically, it comes down the 2 through 5 for each of those teams, bench included. Are they better than the other teams 2 through 5? I think you got to give a slight nod to the Bucks in that regard. I think Middleton and Drew Holiday and even Brook Lopez, even though he shoots too many darn 3-pointers and needs to get inside and help with the rebounding, I think that grouping, I give the slight edge over Herter, Collins, and even Capella, who you consider kind of the 2 through 4, I think, for the Hawks. Now, Bogey, if he's able to, and he's dealing with that knee injury, if he's able to play and play well, that's a nice factor, for the Hawks. Gallinari's too inconsistent. Some nights he's hitting it, more nights he's not. Lou Williams, same deal. It's just inconsistent with him. I don't really trust those guys, are considered the major factors in this series. I think Milwaukee ultimately wins it in 7 games. But if Atlanta wins it, it would not be shocking to me. And I don't think it'd be a major upset. Now, the Bucks are the favorite to win. So I guess if Atlanta won, technically it would be an upset. But overall, I think you got to look at the Bucks as the superior team. To be fair, I've picked the Knicks to beat Atlanta in the series, and I picked Philadelphia to beat Atlanta. So Atlanta Hawk fans, you're going to be in the championship, or at least in the finals, because my predictions they've not been so good or so well. But that's my thoughts, and I got to give them on this show. That's what I think. NBA draft lottery. Yeah, the Pistons were able to win the lottery. They're going to draft Cade Cunningham, the guard out of Oklahoma State. Gives them a nice face of the franchise, a guy that can play multiple positions. You talk about the era of positionless basketball on both ends of the court. A guy who can handle the ball, shoot it, and defend the wing, and do all of those things at a good to very good level. Cade Cunningham's your guy. Is he going to be that instant impact first overall pick, the LeBron, the Shaq, the Duncan, that type of guy, or even a Zion Williamson? Probably not. He's not going to be that number 1 overall pick that comes in and you look at, man, this guy's going to be the face of the NBA for the next 5, 10, 15 years. I don't think he's that, but I think that he is the best player in a very solid class. If you look at Evan Mobley out of USC, you look at Jared Green, out of he didn't play in college, played in the G League. You look at those guys, and you look at Suggs out of Gonzaga. It's a very solid draft class, but I think Cunningham's the main guy you want to go for in that spot. So we'll be following everything that the Pistons do, and we'll go more into the NBA draft as we get closer to it about a month from now. Let's go to the free kick portion of the show and look at the world of professional soccer. Atlanta United is going to be playing tonight against NYCFC. They are coming off of a 2-2 home draw against Philadelphia on June 20th. Atlanta was up 2-0 in the contest, scored 2 second-half goals. However, they gave up 2 second-half goals after being up 2-0 and ended up getting the draw. Some positives from that. You can look at the draw extends Atlanta United's unbeaten streak to 5 matches. Anton Walks scored his first goal of the season for the Five Stripes, and Jackson Conway made his MLS debut. And things were looking pretty good for Atlanta going into the second. It was a scoreless first half, and they were able to grab the lead in the 58th minute off of a corner kick. Brooks Lennon was able to deliver a ball into the near post on a cross to Miles Robinson. Now, Robinson was able to get a head on it, and that ball was deflected into the Philadelphia net by Union player Kasper Przybylko. So it counted as an own goal. But you did see some penetration from the Atlanta offense, and Lennon able to get the ball into the penalty box. And while it counted as an own, and Miles Robinson doesn't get credit for the goal, and it's an own goal for Philadelphia, did show some nice offensive assertiveness for Atlanta. They doubled up the lead in the 83rd minute. Lennon once again with another cross into the box. This one he connected with Anton Walks, who drove a nice header past Philadelphia goalkeeper Andre Blake for the 2-0 lead. Things were looking very good for Atlanta, and they looked like they would get a win over Philadelphia, who, remember, eliminated them from the CONCACAF Champions League about a month and a half ago. So Atlanta was looking good as far as getting revenge, at least in MLS play. But things did not turn out well for United, or for Atlanta at least. Philadelphia was immediately able to get a goal off of that ensuing kickoff from the Anton Walks goal. Substitute Corey Burke was able to level when make the score 2-1. He was able to get a rebound off of a previously saved ball by Atlanta goalkeeper Brad Guzan. He chipped the ball in, and the score was 2-1. Atlanta was leading 2-1 into stoppage time until in the 93rd minute, Jacob Glesnes of Philadelphia was able to retrieve a ball, I'd say about 5 yards outside the penalty box area, and launched a right-footed strike past Guzan on a high corner. Probably the goal of the weekend in MLS soccer. You could call it a golazo. Nonetheless, the goal did make the score 2-2, and that's how the game ended. Here is Gabriel Heinze on Atlanta giving up the second half goals.
Primero es mi responsabilidad. First is my responsibility. Y después, esto es un juego donde el balón se va para cualquier lado. And afterwards, the ball is a game where the ball is moving from one side to the other. Creo que no hubo errores porque justo iba a salir el jugador que iba a salir. I think we had not a mistake because exactly the moment when he shot, the one player was jumping on him. Lo que trabajamos primero es que ese jugador que viene en conducción no dé el pase. What we have been working with them is not to allow this player to make a pass. Y la segunda opción es que tratar de evitar que remate. And also is not to allow this player to shoot on goal. Y la verdad que hay que felicitarlos, pero no tengo que verlo, pero acá no hay responsabilidades. I wouldn't want to talk about responsibility. What we can do is to congratulate them. O es mía por decirles esos dos conceptos cómo se soluciona esa jugada. Or it's my responsibility because it's the way I explain how to solve these kind of situations.
And here is Lennon on the team struggling to hold these second half leads.
Yeah, I mean, in a soccer game, both teams are going to have chances. They were able to capitalize on their chances late in the game tonight. I thought their second goal was I know some people can call it, a lucky shot, but we didn't close them out and didn't put pressure on them. So, we need to look at that on film and go back and fix our mistakes, and hopefully next time we have a 2-0 lead, we can keep it.
And you have to remember, Atlanta's been in this situation multiple times this year. They struggled at Inter Miami, holding on to a lead. They struggled against Nashville, holding on to a second half lead. These contests ended up as draws and things like that, but they are dropping points in a major way. So, this is just a continual situation for Atlanta not being able to hold on to leads and keep those 3 points. Let's see, from that match, before we get to NYCFC's match today. Actually, I should have mentioned as well, Atlanta had a good chance to retake the lead in the 96th minute when Conway was able to get a shot on goal and he headed the ball into the frame, but it was saved by Blake. The header went right to Blake, and that was Atlanta's best scoring opportunity to get the victory. Here is Brooks Lennon on the match itself.
Yeah, I mean, we're obviously very, very disappointed not to get 3 points tonight. Up 2-0, just like our last match against Nashville at home. With less than 10 minutes left to go in the game. Obviously, really disappointed to drop the 3 points, but when you're looking at it from a higher lens, I think the overall performance was good, and I'm proud of the boys for how hard we worked, not only tonight, but in the build up in the 3 weeks that we had off. I thought we trained very hard and put everything forth so that we could get a result, and just unfortunate tonight.
Yeah, so Atlanta visits New York City FC tonight. It's not at Yankee Stadium. I've been up there personally. I went there 2 times to see Atlanta play NYCFC at Yankee Stadium. They're not doing that this year. I guess with COVID protocols and just the scheduling with the Yankees regular season, they are playing at Red Bull Stadium in New Jersey. And so it's funny. Well, it's unique because you have just with the way the season's working. Let's break it down. We have Vancouver playing in Salt Lake City or playing in Utah. No, they're playing in they're playing in the United States. We know the Canadian teams are some of them playing in Florida, some playing in the East Coast. But now we have the NYCFC playing playing their home games at their rival, the Red Bulls. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens there with that. Gabriel Heinze, the manager of Atlanta United, he will be suspended for the match. He got a 3rd yellow card in that match against Philadelphia, so that means he has to sit out tonight's game. He'll still be able to travel to Red Bull Stadium or arena and be with the team, but he cannot be on the sidelines. And there's some rules with how he could communicate with the team or not communicate with the team, all that stuff. What that means, assistant Mariano Tolili will serve as a replacement on the sideline. Here is Ezequiel Barco on Heinze's suspension.
Sí, primero, bueno, va a ser un poco raro porque que no esté el técnico se hace un poco raro, pero nada, creo que desde un principio tenemos una idea de juego muy, muy clara, que la representamos todos, cuerpo técnico, jugadores, y nada, esa va a ser la idea de mañana, de tratar de seguir haciendo lo mismo que veníamos haciendo en los partidos pasados y quedarnos con esos 3 puntos que nos van a venir muy bien.
Well, it'll be a little strange not to have our head coach there, but I think we have a very clear style of play, and we all represent that from the coaching staff on down to the players. So that'll be the same idea tomorrow, and I don't think anything will change.
And here's George Bello also elaborating on how things may be different or may still be the same with Heinze not being on the bench.
Obviously, it's always good to have your head coach out there, but I think we still have the same mentality. His energy goes through not only the players but also the staff too. So, I mean, the staff has the same energy as well. So it's not really going to be too much of a change. Like I said, we're all on the same page. We all bring each other energy, and I feel like we're ready to bring on this next game. So I wouldn't say it's too much of a downfall because all the staff are great, and all the staff I'm sure will bring the same energy.
Now, New York City FC is coming off of a 3-2 home loss to New England this past weekend. Andrade and Tahuri Shradi had goals in the loss. The big offensive threat for NYCFC is Medina. He leads the team with 5 goals. Tinnerholm has a team-high 4 assists for NYCFC so far this season. Both teams come into the contest tonight with 11 points on the season. Here is Heinze on New York City FC.
Bueno, un equipo que tiene conceptos en lo que es circulación muy buenos.
Very clear. They have very clear concept of how to move the ball.
Donde deja muy pocos espacios para que juegue el rival.
They don't give much space to the opponent.
Posiciona mucha gente en campo de rival, donde hace muy difícil.
They accumulate a lot of players in our own half.
Con cambios de posición que ha hecho en todos estos partidos.
Also, he changed some positioning during the last games.
Y el equipo no ha bajado su rendimiento, o no ha bajado lo que propone.
And by these changes, the team did not lose performance at all.
Y el desafío es competir.
And the challenge is to compete.
Y tratar de buscar de ser mejor que el rival.
And to show that we are better than the opponent.
And also here is George Bello elaborating on the challenges or what he expects to see tonight against NYCFC.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a quick turnaround. We just had the game Saturday, but like Sunday. But yeah, we talked about them today. We have a good game plan against them. You know, they have a lot of talented players. So, I mean, we're just going to go out there and continue to play our game because, I mean, in my opinion, we've been playing very well. Just about those closing up games, obviously. But, yeah, I'm really confident. And I know all my teammates and I will try our best to get the win.
Yeah, so we'll be keeping track of that contest, and we'll have a post-match analysis, probably a write-up, as well as break it down on our next show. Yeah, as far as the rest of the soccer world, let's go to the Euros. I think what you've seen from the Euros so far, just overarching themes, I think France is the team to beat still so far in the matchup. France is looking very good. Italy's look good. It's the usual suspects. England got a nice win yesterday to win their group. But I think you're looking at, if all things are equal, if all teams are clicking right, I think France is still the squad that you have to look at as the favorites. But it's very interesting to see what happens with the Euros. We know that Scotland's, the North Macedonias, those teams would struggle. Spain is last in this division or in its group right now. They played today. Yeah, very surprising to see the Spaniards not doing so well. But Italy's been a nice surprise, looking more of a threat offensively than maybe in the past. So that's good to see as far as for the Italians, at least on their side of things. They're looking really good. I think with Copa America, same deal. You have Brazil, and I don't want to say everyone else. You got to look at Argentina, just like their roster. You have to respect that. But Brazil looks like they're going to be pretty tough to beat in that regard. On our next show, we'll do a little bit more analysis on those two international competitions as they take place. We're going to wrap the show in the Miscellaneous Department and things going on there. I didn't see Rahm wins too much in the U.S. Open. I know it's a very nice win for him, getting his first major. We know the story with him a few weeks ago, contracting COVID-19, having to be pulled off of the golf course in the middle of a round because he tested positive, had to rebound from that. He was able to win the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines. So a good moment for him. It was very funny because it's like he won the tournament. Well, he didn't win the tournament necessarily because you had some other players on the course. When he finished his round, he hit that clutch putt for birdie on 18 to give himself the lead, and he kept it for good. But it's like he hit the putt, he cheered and celebrated, and 2 minutes later, his newborn baby and his wife are right beside him. And I was like, wow, that was very quick. I don't know if I'd have my newborn baby in this outdoors in that environment with all the health issues going on in the world. But he did what he needed to do, or he felt right, and he ended up winning the tournament, so that was very good for him. And then lastly, the MLB, Major League Baseball, just cannot get it right. I'm not even going to talk about Wander Franco, the number one Major League Baseball prospect, came up last night in his Major League debut for the Tampa Bay Rays, the Tampa Rays, hit a 3-run home run, drew a nice walk to start his first at bat. Just major moment for him. I have to talk about Joe Girardi and Max Scherzer and their silliness. If Major League Baseball is going to make this type of rule, it's got to be more structured and more organized than just to say a month ago, we don't like sticky substances with the pitchers. We're going to start enforcing it. And that's it. Now you have Joe Girardi 3 times in a contest able to get the umpires to check Max Scherzer for sticky substances. And for Girardi, I mean, I don't like what he did, but under the rules, if you're going to give a manager an advantage like that, or a situation where he can test the player out and cause a problem, they're going to take advantage of it. I'm sure he didn't. I'm sure Girardi knew that Scherzer did not use illegal substances, especially after the first time. You think he's going to pass the first test and then all of a sudden get some pine tar and some sunscreen and I'm really going to cheat now? No. But you can disrupt his rhythm because Scherzer was giving it to the Phillies and was pitching really well. And now you got all this commotion. Then Girardi, he comes out, starts yelling at Scherzer. Now Scherzer does this after he gets an out, does a stare down to the Phillies, dugout, and this in baseball, it's just such it's stupid. But it causes all these delays and all this stuff, and you can have all these baseball strategies that's part of the game, and he's using strategy. That's just bad. No one wants to see that, and it causes a lot of drama and a lot of unnecessary attention to the game. I don't like seeing that stuff, and it just takes away, from what you really want to see on the baseball field. That concludes today's show. Thanks for listening to our broadcast. As always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, go to Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Sports Inquirer. Also go to our page itself, thesportsinquirer.net. And then finally, subscribe to us on YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and iTunes under the Sports Inquirer. Until next time, good fight, good night, be safe.